Tired of business buzzword? We are too. That's why we created Insert Buzzword, a podcast dedicated to uncovering the real stories behind entrepreneurs and business leaders. I'm Jeremy, along with JJ and Tristan. Join us as we explore the triumphs, challenges, and the untold stories of our guests. Let's get this conversation started. Good evening, everyone. Delighted to have Alan Clark on the podcast. Alan, I am very excited to work out some dots, how we know each other, mutual connections and what have you. But in order to get us going, maybe you could give us a quick introduction as to who you are and what you do, please.
Yeah, no problem. So brilliant to be here. Delighted to be here, guys. Thanks for having me along. It's really nice to get the offer to speak to you guys. I would imagine lots in common, but a little bit from me. As you say, name's Alan Clark. I have been running my own business now for about 7 years. Kind of really enjoyed doing that. A lot of the business is around about training development, but that's come latterly. And there's various other stages we've been through up until that point. I'm Sport Billy, so that's probably something to know about me. I'm the guy who just wants to run about playing fields all the time, and I'm 49 now, so we should probably actually stuff it. No, we should keep doing that. That's the thing about me. So yeah, that's probably the background to get started with, I suppose.
Nice. Okay, so the business that you've been running for 7 years, how, why, when?
Yeah, good question. I sometimes ask myself all those three at the same time. So I kind of started the business, I suppose, 2017. We actually had the idea for the business with a mate of mine from university. He was my best mate at uni. We shared a flat at uni. Very similar type of people. We got very drunk one night. And I can pinpoint the date. It was the day Scotland played Ireland in the Six Nations. He came up to visit me. We got very drunk. I said, my contract at Aberdeen University is kind of coming to an end. And he says, well, I've got an idea for a business. And that's kind of how it started. And initially it was brain breaks for primary school children to take them away from that kind of idea of just listening to a teacher or learning all the time. It was just putting in 5-minute brain breaks every 20 minutes or so. So that was the idea for the business. When we came up with that in the pub, and then we woke up the next morning and thought, well, it's not the worst idea we've ever had in a pub, so let's give it a crack. So that's how it came about originally.
Nice. Best ideas often do materialise over a pint.
The worst as well, but this was actually not too bad. So.
Nice. So yeah, two friends from way back when. Like how? I mean, so like immediately, I'm like contracts coming to an end. Was there a bit of sort of nervousness, trepidation as to like, Joe, we need to start making money fast? If the sort of primary source of income is about to come to a hard finish.
Yeah, there was a wee bit of that, I have to say. Particularly for me, he was okay. He was a teacher at the time. He was a PE teacher. That's what I studied when I was at university. But I'd never really gone into the teaching side of things, dabbled a little bit in it, and then realised that probably wasn't for me. So I'd kind of moved in different direction. He was kind of okay. So he had his job. It was ongoing. My contract was ending probably in I think about 3 months. There was going to be some redundancy wrapped up in that, but certainly not enough to see me over any kind of sustained period of time. So there was a bit of a, what am I going to do? I'd initially thought about running some sort of sports coaching type of thing, and then I thought that's a little bit too much like the teaching side of things that I tried to get out of. So when he came up with that idea, it was actually really quite a nice one. And yeah, the pressure to make money was definitely a driver right at the start there. So we had to have something that got off the ground reasonably quickly as well, which was interesting. It was an interesting wee journey, trying to make that happen.
How did you get the first customers?
Did what everybody does and kind of just sold to people that I knew. It sold to people that kind of liked me, which was it was great. You know, I had a really good network around about schools, particularly in Dundee, but probably wider. I'd been an active schools manager in Dundee. I'd been a sports development manager in Perth and Kinross, so I'd worked quite closely with quite a lot of schools. And obviously, the other good thing about being over 40 when you started that type of business was the people that I went to university with were now head teachers and deputies and in charge of budgets.
Awesome.
That was pretty cool. So we used that as a bit of an opportunity and a lever to make our kind of first sales, I suppose. And it went really well. It was a kind of an online resource. We'd recorded a whole heap of videos. Originally, we'd wanted to be in the videos, but kind of realised that two 40-odd-year-old men jumping about in a video wasn't really going to inspire primary school children. So we got some, frankly, younger, better-looking people in to do that for us. So we made a whole lot of videos. We put them online, and teachers that were then able to buy the resource, or schools were able to buy the resource for us, or from us, sorry. And that's how we got our first sales. Our pricing policy was an absolute shambles. Our market research was pretty much non-existent. We really hadn't a clue what we were doing. I mean, to be totally honest, we were just flying by the seat of our pants.
Well, yeah, you jump out and build a parachute on the way down, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's genuinely what we did. We didn't even know how to set up a bank account. But what it turns out is you could set a company up pretty easily. It costs you about 30 last time I looked at Company's House. And once we'd done that, we thought we were amazing, because we were walking about saying, "Oh, I'm a company director," which meant nothing to us. But it was about, what's that, £6?
But you can then sign people's passports applications and what have you.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the thing. We were like, oh, yeah, look at us, captains of industry, that type of thing, but not a clue about what we were doing. And I don't think that's uncommon. I think people just kind of jump into these, or certainly, I jumped straight in and just thought. Well, I also thought we were going to make millions, which was
likewise.
painfully hasn't happened either. So yeah, that was a kind of interesting start for us. But we made quite a lot of money quite quickly. We made sort of 18 sales in the first couple of months, wow. Which was brilliant. So we thought well, this is easy. Actually, what we're doing is selling to our friends, which is that's the first bit, isn't it? Going wider than that proved more of a challenge, I have to say.
Nice. Okay, cool. I've got so many follow-up questions. Before I pass over to Tristan, I'm going to have Catherine, my wife, listen to this episode. So Catherine she's a maths teacher, and she's really, really good at creating on the smartboard resources, the interactive smartboard stuff. She's like, no one else is doing it. I can do it so much better than everyone else. I'm like, well, set yourself up, try and sell. She's like, oh, it's too hard to start the next thing selling at schools. I'm like, no. I reckon where there's a will, there's a way. So with that said, I'm excited to take the conversation, but I think it's only fair that I ask Tristan if he has any questions.
Allow me in the conversation. Thank you. I appreciate that. What was the first kind of, oh crap moment when you started the business? You'd obviously got these 18 sales early on. At what point did you go, crap, maybe this isn't as easy as we thought?
Hey everyone, just a quick break from the episode. As you know, Insert Buzzword is a passion project for us, and we love creating this content for you. If you're enjoying the show and want to support us in keeping it going, we've set up a super easy way for you to do that. Head over to the episode description and click on the support the show. Any contribution helps, and it means the world to us. Thanks again for being awesome listeners. Cheers.
Yeah, well, I think the old crap moment came. We kind of launched the business around about March. We'd made the kind of sales through, I would say, April, May into June. The first old crap moment was actually, we really kind of, you can probably guess, was summer holidays, where we realised that we've then got a 6-week hole in anything that we were going to do, and obviously that 6-week hole, there's a lead time to make the sale after that 6 weeks. So actually, we were carrying quite a big hole into the next sort of term, I suppose. We're talking in school. So the biggest old crap moment was literally, oh, Yahoo, we've made all this money. We can start paying ourselves heaps of cash. To this 18 grand or whatever we've made in here is probably going to last us until, halfway through September. And then we need more sales. And I suppose, to your wife's point, the issue with schools is they tend not to pay you very quickly. So because you're dealing with local authorities and all that sort of stuff. So the actual cash flow situation became a bit of an issue for us as well. Not that Craig was too worried about it, because he was sitting with his teaching wage and it was coming.
No, don't even. Oh my goodness! Yeah, my wife, she's on holiday right now, and I'm like, today came home. I was like, I've done 15,000 steps, darling, at work. I'm tired. She's like, I am tired too, but I'm like, no, but you're on holiday, spending time with our children.
Yeah, I'm sure she's delighted to be doing that.
Yeah, no, exactly. You can see the smile on my face while I say that, but teachers on their holidays, it is a tough life for them.
Oh, I tell you, you don't want to be making that argument. I would imagine with your wife. I would not be a teacher for all the tea in China. Tough.
Well, I'm saying this in the safety of my shed at the bottom of the garden.
Yeah, well done. You maybe don't show her this part of the episode.
Yeah, no, I'll clip this out.
What prompted you to want to go down a different career path to start a business? What was the kind of pivotal moment in your teaching career that you thought this is not for me anymore?
Yeah, probably a couple of them. So when I graduated, 1996. When I graduated, it was quite some time ago. I'd been wondering about PE teaching when I was actually at university studying it, and is this something I really want to do, or actually was the driver for me just going to college or going to university and running about in a sports field for 4 years, and having fun doing that. So when I graduated, it was kind of like there wasn't an awful lot going on. There weren't many teaching jobs kicking about. And there also, there was a 2-year probation period, which is slightly different now. It was 2 years and you had to do it part-time and supply and all that sort of stuff. So it wasn't that appealing to me. You guys have been in classes, I'm sure, when you were younger, when a supply teacher came in. And your response to having a supply teacher is probably typical, I would imagine, to everybody. Everybody's just bullies supply teachers when they come in, and it's not a very fun gig to be in.
We're both sniggering, but I was that kid, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
So was I. I don't think we all were. It was like, Yahoo! This is great. We're not going to have to do anything this period. So I kind of, when I was leaving college, that was the situation, or leaving university, that was the situation that I found myself in. I was sitting in the flat with Craig way back then, and the phone rang, and it was actually Craig's ex-girlfriend. She was living in Hong Kong, and here's where the Bruce Aitchison link starts to come in a little bit. She was living in Hong Kong and working for a sports coaching company out there. And she said to Craig, do you want to come over? And Craig says, well, actually, I've got a new girlfriend. She's not going to be too happy if I shoot off across the world to go and live with you. So I was watching Countdown at the time, and I remember it vividly, watching Countdown and hearing half the conversation. And I just shouted, well, I'll go. And that was pretty much it. That was me jumping out and heading off to Hong Kong. I got a one-way ticket, and that was pretty much me there for the next 4 years. So the teaching side of things, I never really kind of went down that route. I always kind of thought, there's probably something else. So when I was out there, I was coaching sport. I worked for a rugby club for a while. I sold insurance. I sold gym memberships. I actually nearly got on an internship. I was nearly the Pursuit of Happiness guy. I was nearly on that type of internship with a bank at one point. I was just doing anything, frankly. And then when I came home, I ended up getting a job with Scottish Rugby then from that point. So the teaching side things never really happened. I kind of dotted around various other different things, I suppose.
No. We lost you a wee bit at the end there, but you seem to have reappeared in the room.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying I dotted around quite a lot of different stuff and never really kind of got into the teaching side of things. It probably wasn't for me. But weirdly, I've always been working with education. It's kind of arm's length type of stuff. And that's probably where I'm more comfortable. So a lot of the stuff that I still do is with schools. Which is it's always been this anchor throughout my career. There's always been a kind of link to education throughout what I've done.
Did you enjoy Hong Kong?
It was very hard not to. If I'm going to be honest, I mean, it was phenomenal. When I arrived there, it was a colony. So there was no real kind of need for a visa. There was none of, you just turned up. I was 21. It was incredible, to be there, to live that life, that expat life at that age. Probably the best thing I could have done. I don't think I could have stayed there for longer than I did. So 4 years was probably enough. And then it was kind of almost back home to reality. It was a weird existence. Yeah, it was good to come home and back and kind of start a career. Well, that sounds that's kind of it's where I was.
I always enjoy going to Hong Kong, but it's post-colony, post the decolonisation. So, like, first time I was there was the 10-year celebration of the handover. So it was a fair bit while after. But Hong Kong, it's a nice place. I do enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a bit quick.
So you came back
in what are you doing now?
Sorry, what was I doing out there?
No, I said, are you happy in what you do now?
Oh yeah, absolutely happy in what I do now. The stuff that I'm doing now is kind of, I suppose, it's got that education side of things. So I'm doing a lot of training and development work. There's quite a lot of work that I do in schools around about mental health, which is a kind of a wee bit of a passion of mine. And it's actually one of the things that I suppose when we started the company right up at the start, we were really having a look at mental health and holistic health for children. So it's something that I've been interested in, that kind of health and wellbeing side of things for forever, I suppose. And that's, I suppose, the second anchor, I suppose, in what I'm doing is that health and wellbeing side of things. So yeah, I love what I'm doing at the moment. Absolutely love it. I'm delivering, so I can show off and do all that sort of stuff and tell really bad dad jokes and all of that stuff, which is pretty cool when you're delivering stuff. But at the same time, it's the inspiring other people to learn that really kind of drives me. I love that side of things. It's the idea that if I say something to somebody, they go off and learn more about it, then I've done a fantastic job. And I kind of see that as the role, I suppose.
Would you say that's the most fulfilling part of what you do?
Oh, absolutely. There's probably two things. I do. It's that. Yes, that's really fulfilling, and I love that. I love it when people go, as I say, go away, are inspired by what they've heard, or inspired by the conversations that we've had, or inspired by somebody else in the room, and I've been able to facilitate that. And I love that when people go away. That's fantastic. The other thing that kind of fulfills me probably just as much is the giving back stuff that we do. As a company, I've always been really keen that we give back. So after our first iteration of the primary school stuff, what we realised was everybody kind of needed those brain breaks. Everybody needed that type of stuff. So we flipped the model a little bit and then looked at how do we develop this for corporates? And when a corporate bought into it, we were able to then give it for free to a cluster of primary schools, which was great, for the schools. And then recently, or sort of more recently, we made that whole resource available to all primary schools, so anybody can have it, anybody can use it. But our giving back then evolved into, when I work on leadership with a client, for example, I'll then work with a local school to them with their third, fourth, fifth, sixth years on leadership, and develop that side of things. And that's kind of pro bono work that I do. And I also do quite a lot of work. I do work with MCR Pathways as well, so I mentor a young person through that. So that giving back side of things is huge. And it's probably, I jokingly say to people, never be a millionaire in this kind of line of work. I don't want to be a millionaire. It's not, millionaire actually. I don't want to be a billionaire. Millionaire might be quite nice. But it's that's kind of the cool stuff. That's the bit that kind of fulfills you at the end of the day. And that's, to me, is the really good stuff. It's the impact you have on other people. As you kind of roll your way through life. And I think that's important.
Awesome. The mental health piece for schools, for kids. How toxic is social media for children in school these days?
Oh, that's a big question. That is a big question. I think social media is not going anywhere. It's here to stay. Right, so it's probably it's how you look at social media and how it's used that is the important thing there. I think there's a huge education piece to be done, not for the kids. The education piece is to be done for those of us who don't really understand it, and the education piece is probably to be done for parents in terms of some of the stuff that goes on social media, but also the access that kids have got to this. Now I know I've got two kids. They're 18 and 20 now, and since they've had phones, which was probably about the age 11, 12, they've had access to all this kind of social media type of stuff. I haven't had a clue what's been going on there. Really, I don't really know what's been going on, because it's not my era. It's their era. It's the things that they're using. So it's possibly toxic. I'm not 100% sure. It can be really purposeful. It can be really good. It's how it's used that's the important bit. But I think the challenge that we've got at the moment is we just have no idea what's happening out there, what's happening on social media. Personally, I think that's an education thing. I think that's something that we could educate ourselves on and educate our young people on just much, much better than we do at the moment. But as far as mental health is concerned, it's probably got as big an impact on me as it has to a 14, 15-year-old. Am I addicted to my phone? Well, I don't know when the last time my phone was more than 2 meters away from me.
2 meters? Jeez, try 2 feet.
Exactly.
Arm's length.
When was the last time I didn't pick it up the minute I came in from into the house? When was the last time I didn't check a notification when it pinged? You know what? These types of things, the impact on of phones in particular and social media is right across society. I don't think it's necessarily just for young people, and to an extent, they're probably better at handling it than we are, because it's their generation. It's their they own it. We're rubbish with it. And that kind of plays into, I do a lot of work around about male mental health now, and there's a real thing with guys, I suppose, at the moment, and having a look at how we become addicted to things, and potentially shut off other aspects of our lives. Just by having the use of a mobile phone, and having that to pick up all the time.
So where are the big risks for men then around that kind of stuff? What is the big challenge?
It's around about, for me, probably the big ones around about sociability, connection. Men are fantastic in terms of connection. We've got to connect around about something. Now, if that connection isn't a kind of face-to-face connection, it tends to be within kind of social media groups and all that sort of stuff. That's not as valuable. It's not as good for men to be connecting around about social media groups as it is to be connecting around about groups. Then there's the whole thing about what do men do in those groups? Well, actually, we solve each other's problems. We rip into each other. We give each other a hard time, and we've got humour that we fall back on, and all of that type of stuff happens when you meet men. When men meet face to face, we go to stuff. We're emotional with each other. Go to a football game, go to a rugby game, go to a hockey game, go to a basketball game. Men are emotional. If you are stuck to your phone and not doing that, you're not connecting with people and you're not getting those opportunities. You don't feel part of a tribe necessarily if you're stuck to your phone all the time, or you're in the house all the time and you're not with other people. There's some brilliant stuff. There's a book called Lost Connections by a guy called Johann Hari, which talks about our need to connect in society, and the way that connection can help with anxiety, depression, etc. So that side of things, for guys, we get stuck to our phone. We are losing out on all that other good stuff. And with that comes things like being outside, being part of a pack, being part of a gang. These are all things that men should have, because it's good for our health. I could get really geeky and into it and talk about testosterone and et cetera, but all these things are really good for us. And the more we do them, the better our lives are. So connecting with other people, getting out in the fresh air, getting decent sleep. Many times we looked at our phone till 3 a.m.
John, I'd literally said to Tristan before I came on, I was up way too late last night on my phone.
There we go. So testosterone is created in our sleep. When we sleep, that's when we create it, and it's a really valuable. It's a kind of key hormone for men to have. If we're sticking on our phone till 3 o'clock in the morning, we're reducing our testosterone levels for the next day, which means you're not as effective, which means you're not as on the ball. You're kind of all of these things, and you're also laying yourself open to potential health problems as well. All of that sort of stuff tied up in.
Interesting. So, sort of a follow up with that, but sort of two questions. One, like, is there an ideal tribe size? Like, is there a minimum or maximum number of guys that we should be doing these activities with? And I guess the other part is the exercise. So, like, exercise is good for your head, right? Like, releasing all these endorphins and whatnot. So, I guess, yeah, how does it all tie in? Like, I mean, so I was on holiday last week, wasn't doing my morning swim, and I could feel it. Oh my goodness, I was cranky. I wasn't getting that buzz in the morning. And so, yeah, how big a group of pals, guys, should we have, and how much so does the exercise play into?
We're kind of we like to have a place in the world. That's the thing about men. If we feel like we've got a place in a group of people, if we've got a place in a group of guys, then we feel like we're contributing. And that's a big thing in terms of the male sort of psyche, I suppose, is to be able to be contributing to something. So the group size doesn't really matter as long as there's a value from you in that group. So as long as that group feels that you're of value to it, and you feel that you're of value to that group, it's good for you. So there's a need to be part of it. When we start feeling like we're not valuable to a group or we're not valuable to society, that's when we start thinking, well, what's the point in me? And that's where we get into anxiety and kind of dip into the kind of more dangerous sort of mental health levels. So, yeah, we want to be part of something. We want to be part of a group. Guys need 4 things, in terms of. I can go into why testosterone is really good for you. It is. It's like the the best thing for guys, I suppose. So we want to increase sort of our production of testosterone. To do that, you need 4 things, and they're dead simple. I mean, they are dead simple, and you'll know them yourself. You need a reasonable level of exercise. So you need to be able to take exercise. That increases testosterone production. You need to have a decent diet, which means green vegetables, unfortunately, for most of us, right? So most of us who were brought up in a Scottish diet, green vegetables are like something your mum forced you to eat. But along with the kind of mince and tatties or whatever, and the overboiled vegetables that you got when you were wee. Certainly that, I hope my mum's not going to listen to this, but yeah. Green vegetables really help. Sleep is massive for us. So getting enough sleep really helps us to produce testosterone. And the last one is fresh air, sunlight. I guarantee if you're not feeling yourself, or if you're not feeling great or whatever, if we looked at all of those 4, one of them or 2 of them was off kilter. And I suppose the work that I look to do with guys is, I suppose, just looking into that and planning it and looking at what are the changes that we can make to better your life across those 4 areas. There's other stuff, obviously, that goes into it, which is really about kind of our place in the world and masculinity and what that means to us and what we need from that. But those 4 things, if once you've got them right, you tend to be doing pretty well.
Nice.
What were some of your early interests or influences, inspirations, and how or have they changed since earlier days?
Probably there's probably a couple. There's probably 3, I would say. There's my dad, obviously, huge influence on me. And actually my parents, both my parents. My mum, probably, first of all, she's a real kind of high flyer in the health service. She was the first diabetic liaison nurse in Scotland. And she was, we're immensely proud of her for that. And she was really proud of having that post. And she basically built that service across the country. So she was brilliant. There's a kind of entrepreneurial spirit as much as you can have within the NHS there. So fantastic there. Really, she had 2 sons. She had me and my brother. We were a year apart. I can't remember what you call it, Irish twins or something like that, I think you call it. We're like a year apart. He's a wee bit older than me. And we fought each other forever, like right the way through. I mean, just proper fighting as brothers a year apart would do. But ultra competitive with each other. And then my dad as well. So there was 3 guys in the house and my mum. So there's a pretty strong influence from my mum in terms of she wasn't going to let this be a male dominated household. She was making sure, I suppose, that we understood there was a whole other half of society there. So there was a real kind of an understanding about equality, I suppose, in our household, because my mum made sure of that. My dad was also an entrepreneur, I suppose, although he would hate that word. He set up his own business and he sold office equipment in the Borders, which was it was great. He loved that, and he got to go and do his own thing, which was brilliant. He didn't like working for other people, so there's an influence there, I suppose. I can't imagine working for anybody else now. It's a weird sort of situation. I can't imagine that. So probably family. Certainly my brother, the competitive instinct, he's driven that. Because I just wanted to beat him at everything. He was the same with me. And then there's probably 2 teachers at school, both of whom I've written to in the last sort of 2 or 3 years, explaining the impact that they'd kind of had on me. One was a techie teacher. His name was Benny Rafferty at Selkirk High School. Benny was hard as nails, techie teacher-esque, if you like. Absolute nails. But he took our rugby team from first year to fourth year at Selkirk High, and we were garbage, absolute garbage. When Benny took us on in first year, and he knew what he was getting because he could see we were garbage. But he took us for 4 years, and then we slowly became less garbage over 4 years until we were kind of half decent at the end of fourth year, and then he passed us on to another guy. But just that idea that everybody, like Benny was brilliant because he just stuck with it. He just stuck at it. He didn't give up. He didn't give up on us, and we weren't the Mighty Ducks. You know, we were just working our way through to fourth year. But he was brilliant. He was hard as nails, and he never gave up on us, which was brilliant, and I really appreciated that. And then the other guy was a guy called Graham Marshall, who was my head of PE at school. And Marsh was fantastic. He turned up when I was starting second year. As I said before, I was a sporty kid. This guy walked into the changing rooms in the start of second year. He was a Scottish international rugby player, and he was 6'5", and he walked in the changing rooms, and I thought, Jesus Christ, this man's massive. And then he kind of chatted about it a bit, and then I thought, I want to be like you. I was never going to get to 6'5". I made sort of 5'6", but not 6'5". But he was a kind of inspirational character because he was at the top of his game, and he was doing the job that I wanted to do. And that kind of drove me down that path, I suppose. So yeah, inspiration. They were probably the people that have inspired me through, and in the early days in my kind of early life. Good people, and I've written to Benny and I wrote to Marsh as well, just through lockdown, I think, just to say thanks.
And what would you say your biggest challenge you've faced, either professionally or personally?
Oh, yeah, I think without a shadow of a doubt, kind of both merge into the two. I had a bit of a think about this, and in 2001, I came back from Hong Kong and I got a job with Scottish Rugby, and it was like the dream job. I was development officer for Scottish Rugby. I had the patch up in Grampian, so I was dealing with Aberdeen City, Aberdeenshire, just a huge area of Scotland when you get up there. And I went straight into that job. It was brilliant. Company car. I was knocking about with thistles in my car. I was all thistled up with all the gear and all that sort of stuff. I thought it was the bomb, honestly. And loved that job. But in 2005, they had a restructure at Scottish Rugby, and I was made redundant. And I'll make that point that I was made redundant, regardless of what HR people tell people. Right, the job has been made redundant. You're not making the job redundant, you're making a person redundant. And I always kind of make that point to people. But that was an absolute killer because right at that point, we were 3 months pregnant with a second child. And it was like, mortgage, no job, 3 months pregnant, all of that sort of stuff going on. And that you take a real hit, particularly, and again, coming back to men's health, you take a real hit as a guy because that questions your whole, reason for being there. I can no longer provide, I can no longer be part of this kind of clan, all of that type of stuff. You don't want me, I can't provide, we can't bring the money in and all that sort of stuff. So that was a huge hit, 2005, about August sort of time. And I left Scottish Rugby. I had to go back to teaching, which I didn't want to do. But it was the only option, I suppose. And to be fair, it was a decent option. I got to work with some pretty good people in the departments I was working in. I was on supply, but I was on longer term supply, so it's slightly different. You get to know people. And that kind of lifted me out of that a little bit. But really, really difficult time, that because you don't know how you're going to pay the bills, until you work out a plan. and Lynn was going to be going off on maternity leave, which wasn't going to help us financially at that point either. We already had a 2-year-old there. So yeah, really difficult time.
Yeah, was the 2-year-old conscious of any of this? I know it might sound like a silly question, but kids can pick up on not the specifics of the situation, but maybe the energy or the environment. Is that ever something that's spoken about now they're older, or passed them by?
I don't think so. I mean, I've kind of been through a few we'll call them interesting times. I've been made redundant 3 times. Which is challenging. She's certainly been, both the kids have been aware of the second 2 times. The second time was fine because it was at Aberdeen University, and it was, we were starting the business up, and actually I kind of knew what was happening. It wasn't a big kind of reg. We kind of almost knew that it was going to come to an end at some point, and it was great to get a decent redundancy out there. The third time was just a couple of years ago. I'd actually gone. I'd kept the company going in the background, but had taken a job. It was a training and development job, and then out of the blue they said, "Oh, we don't need you anymore." So I had to kind of take a company which had been kind of slightly mothballed and almost restart it at that point. Yeah, the kids are aware, and my wife's aware. I suppose at those times of the impact it has on me, but they're fantastic. You know, they're great. I've got a couple of great kids, and I've got a fantastic wife behind me, I suppose. And do you know what? The more times things happen to you, the less you're worried about it, because it's happened before. Resilience is one of these things that you can't teach resilience. That's one of the things that annoys me with people that say, "Oh, I'll do 2 days course on resilience, and after that you'll be resilient." Well, that's nonsense. It's impossible to have that. You've got to live something, or you've got to fall back on values for resilience. And I suppose the first time I was made redundant, it was, I don't know what I'm going to do here. From there, once that's happened and you've kind of come back from that, there's not an awful lot, you know, that's going to phase you too much, because you understand that, you know, well, one, it was employable, I had something to fall back on, and 2, the world didn't end. It was kind of okay. So therefore, when it happens a second time, it's kind of going to be okay again, as long as you kind of keep that mindset. So, yeah, I think that's certainly, and certainly, I mean, running a business, you guys run businesses, you know, geez, the amount of setbacks you got on a weekly basis.
Constant rejection.
Yeah. I mean, I'm God. I mean, I don't know what you guys are like, but for my business, I am the T-boy as well as the head salesperson and the
all of it
director. You know, so when you're doing business development, you're doing sales, you're writing proposals for people, you're getting knocked back all the time. If you don't walk into that with a level of resilience, you're going to really struggle. I think, and you know, it's one of the things for people setting up businesses. You probably got to fail a couple of times in life before you get to the point where you succeed. And that's part of the process, I suppose.
Great. How do you deal with the challenging mental load of being the owner and the T-boy and the guy who's doing the sales and being rejected 9 times out of 10?
Yeah. This year it actually probably went 9.5 times out of 10. It's been tough. Yeah. I think it is just that. Do you know what? It's going to be okay. But the other thing, I do know that things aren't always going to be rosy. So if you have that kind of mindset, it's not always going to be brilliant. I'm not always going to win. And sometimes social media kind of really doesn't help with that, because life's rosy all the time on social media. We're kind of sold this perfect life. Nobody's got that perfect life. So if you understand that it's not going to be perfect for you all the time, you can handle the hits, you can handle the knockbacks, because because you're expecting they're going to come. They're going to happen. So it's not a surprise when something comes along. You don't get a contract, you don't get this or whatever, or your tea's got too many sugars in it, or whatever it might be. But yeah, the you kind of just roll with it. But I think the other thing that I do is I use support networks as well. And I'll go and I'll talk to my wife and I'll say, listen, this is what's happening. This is what's happened. There was a point in June that I was like, stuff it, we'll just wrap it up and I'll go and get a job. And then I had a conversation with my wife and she says, well, that's ridiculous. And I says, I know it's ridiculous, right? Let's just assume, let's move on, right? But you talk to people around about you. And I think this is one of the other big things about guys. When guys are talking, we don't want to just talk it out. What we're looking for are solutions. We want to talk it out and then for somebody to say to us, or for us to realise that, do you know what? I'll do that. That is a kind of almost a fundamental difference between men and women, that women just can talk things through and be happy that they've been able to vent. Men don't want to vent, they want solutions. They can vent and then they need a solution to come on the other end, because we're a kind of action-driven type of people. So I talk to people and then I say, I have conversations to say, well, so what am I going to do now? What's my next steps? And I put some action behind it. And that's the kind of most important thing, that I've got somewhere to go at the end of that conversation. Mm-hmm. I'm not just, God, that was a great chat. But I've got nowhere. I need a plan. And that's the big bit. That's the way that I do it. I don't know how you guys do it, but that's certainly the way that I kind of try and do things.
Probably very similar. And one of the people that I go for the support for is here in the room. Yo, Tristan, what's happened?
Yeah. There's a variety of things. Sometimes crying in the corner, but and then
both be crying. No, it's done, Tristan. Time to wrap it up. See those moments that you were describing where you know it's kind of going south. What's the last sort of big one you had? So, like, in my head when you were describing that there, I was like, that email that I opened, and immediately my blood goes cold and the adrenaline shot goes through, and you're like, ugh. What was the last big one of those you reckon that you had?
I think probably, there's a point in June this year. So we're not talking a long time ago. We're probably talking about, 6-7 weeks ago, probably the start of June. As I said, I'm 49, so 50 this year. So we'd planned quite a lot around about this year. I went to the Euros for 12 days with Craig, my business partner from back in the day. And then 3 days after I went to the Euros, I was going on holiday with my wife to South America. So we're just back from Chile and Argentina. So I was having a month off, which you guys will know, a month off work means a month, for me, is a month not developing the business, not bringing any money in. To go to the Euros, I turned down a couple of days' work, which ironically would have paid for the Euros. So that side of things. So I saw that month off coming. And at the start of June, I had 2 clients, potential clients, who had proposals in with. One came back and said, we're going with somebody else. And that was a life-changing potential client. It was going to be something that I could have scaled the business on quite easily. I could have gone from me to me plus 3 on that one. So I put an awful lot of work into it, and they just gone with somebody else. It's just how it works sometimes. So that was the first one. The second one came back and they said, we're going to hold. So we're going to put a hold on this until Q3. So September sort of time. Whereas I thought there was going to be work way before then. So then I was like, whoa, cash flow. There's enough money in the business, but it's just not in the business yet. That kind of idea. And I thought, this is too hard. It's too hard. I can't I'm clearly not cut out for this. 7 years in, I'm clearly not cut out for this. So stuff it. And I spent the morning on LinkedIn applying for ridiculous jobs all over the world, just doing stuff, And I always say this to people: if you're running a small company by yourself, for example, and you're not on LinkedIn applying for a job every couple of months, you're not a real entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So, because that's reality, right? And all your Stephen Bartlett's and your all of these guys, that's not reality. That's just something you got lucky, right? Reality is it's a grind and it's hard and it's just challenging. And people should be people should be aware of that when they kind of go into it. But if you grind and you keep grinding and you can see that there's an end goal, there's an end point, and you're kind of still going to be alive. Just being alive is brilliant because the journey is superb. Like working for yourself is incredible because you're alive all the time, for good or bad. But yeah, the last time that happened probably the start of June. Before that, it'd been a while. But there's been a real kind of the stuff that I do. I would say there's a real kind of deflation in it over the last 5 or 6 months, and that could be kind of global pressures. It could be elections. It could be various different things just hitting. But we're still here. We're still alive, and you can
still breathing.
Still breathing.
So it's mostly B2B that you do. Then you would describe it as.
Yeah, mostly B2B. So there'll be quite a lot of work with organisations around about leadership, about team development. They're kind of core work, I suppose. I do associate work for other companies as well, and that keeps the wheels turning, which is great. And then that kind of B2B work might lead on to some one-to-one coaching, particularly around about kind of the men sort of 35 to 55 type of age group. That would be working with. So yeah, B2B, and then I suppose that could lead on to whatever with individuals.
What would you say your best sales tactic or for closing those B2B sales? Like where are you fishing? Where do you find the biggest fish?
Yeah, that's a good question. Recently, it's been. I went to a really interesting chat. I thought I was going to a networking meeting, and I ended up. I was at an RBS lecture from their chief economist. I thought it was networking, which kind of shows how on top of my diary I am. So anyway, I'm sitting in the room, and the RBS chief economist is talking, and she put up a graph of all the basically industries, and she said, here's the industries that have experienced growth since COVID, and here's the industries that have experienced a sort of decline. And it was really interesting. It was professional services was right at the top, growth of about 20% across the board. Down to mining and kind of quarrying, that type of, which was about a 10 to 20% decrease in profit over the same period of time. So I took that as the first and only time I've listened to an economist, and I took that and I went
from RBS, so everywhere.
Yeah, from RBS, exactly. Well, maybe it's not the greatest sort of view to take, but I was like, right, okay, that seems to be an area which is, professional services, so accountancy, legal, marketing, all of these types of things going through huge growth at the moment. So that's where I focus my business. That's the kind of finger in the air type of stuff that I tend to do in terms of looking at where the areas that I can work. But actually, that was quite useful as a kind of almost a whoops, I'm here, let's take something from it type of approach. So business there is actually looking like it's going to bear a little bit of fruit. The other area for me is looking like the kind of transition in oil and gas industry or the energy industry up towards Aberdeen. Obviously, based in Dundee, you're reasonably close to that area. So there's a big push around about transition. Scottish Government have just set up quite a big transition project up in Aberdeen. And the energy industry in particular, and particularly offshore when it comes to mental health for men, is a huge area. So looking at leadership, team development, etc., around about transition, but also and change management, I suppose, but also those that are working in high pressure, high stress, high consequence environments, and what the impact is on mental health.
That's really interesting.
Mm.
Well, I did as well. Like, no, but like I said it, somewhat tongue, and apologies to cut you off, just in somewhat tongue in cheek, but I know that folk that went to do the offshore apprenticeships, they make great money, but then they come back and they've got 3-4 weeks to sort of sit by themselves and on a big massive pile of cash, and sometimes they do things that they maybe shouldn't be doing. So,
well, I think if you look at that, that kind of offshore rotation that you see, you could be away for a couple of weeks, back for a couple of weeks, whatever it is. If we talk about exercise, just the 4 things that we talked about: exercise, sleep, and nutrition, and sunlight. 2 of them you're missing offshore, and 2 of them you're missing onshore sometimes. And then there's alcohol intake, which tends to go through the roof for guys that come onshore, particularly in the first couple of days. And that has a huge impact on mental health as well. So, it's not a life that lends itself to being particularly healthy. But there are things that we can do. There's quite a lot of good work being done for the guys offshore in terms of mental health already, and it's being able to kind of feed into that and help people as they come back on shore, or potentially even getting offshore and helping over there.
Nice. Apologies, Tristan, to cut you off there.
That's all right. I was going to ask, what is your greatest achievement, and how do you define success?
I had a brilliant one the other day, right? And it's what is that? It was a podcast I listened to, right? And a podcast I listened to called the Socially Distant Sports Bar, which is 3 guys from Wales that run this. I don't know if you've kind of heard of it, but really funny podcast. But one of the guys had been speaking to somebody, and he was a billionaire or something, and he said he would measure his success not by the money he's made or anything like that, but the fact that his grown-up children still wanted to speak to him, still felt that it was a good time with their dad. And I've now got, as I said, I've got an 18-year-old and a 20-year-old. They're probably my greatest success, because I think we got them. We're certainly both at university next year. I think we've got them to a point where they're kind of nice people. I can go for a drink with both of them, which is quite nice. And they don't feel like they have to run away, and they want to spend time with me. So I think that's all right.
So this does sound like the dream. Goodness.
Yeah, I buy the drinks. So let's be clear on that. There's not an awful lot of. Well, actually, I went to Newcastle. My daughter and me went to Newcastle for the weekend. I says, "Oh, let's go away," and she says, "Yeah, let's go to Ireland." And then I was like, "Nah, let's just cock canny a little bit and go to Newcastle." So we went to see Newcastle Falcons play Bath because Finn Russell was playing for them. She's a big Finn Russell fan, so he was playing for Bath. It was his comeback game. So we went down there. First pub we went into on the quayside in Newcastle was Witherspoon's, and she bought a drink there. And the second pub we went into was a cocktail bar, and I bought the drinks there. So you can imagine how well planned she had this all weekend.
Learn from the best.
Yeah. £9, I think her round was. Mine was well over 20. So she's clearly got her head screwed on when it comes to that. But yeah, I like success is probably for me. It's not work. Work pays for life. And you can enjoy work, and that's great, but work pays for life. Life is the rest of it. It's the good stuff. Why am I doing this? We want to bring up good people. We want to create nice people in the world, and we want them to kind of carry that legacy on for us, and that's brilliant. And we want to enjoy it ourselves. So me and my wife spend money on holidays. We don't spend money on stuff. We go away, we do stuff, we enjoy life. And that probably is the greatest success, that I've now got the freedom to be able to do that. And the comfort to know that it's going to be okay. My financial security for me is being able to buy a round without worrying about whether I can afford it. That's cool. I quite like that. And so that's enough, I suppose.
Brilliant. Big fan of that.
Well, you're a big fan of me buying around.
And you know what? I've been reflecting on it. So last year, COVID, one of the outcomes was just doing a lot of camping, going into camping, and just like reconnecting with nature, leaving the phone, or going to places where there's like zero phone signal. So trying to get that like reconnection, and just haven't done it. We just haven't done it as much as I did last year. And if your comfort is being able to afford around and not being able to worry about it, I think me this year, it's like the comfort last year was just being able to go, let's just go camping, and we just didn't do it this year. Not as much anyway. Summer's not over, but it's certainly almost over.
Yeah. I think for me, we used to do holidays with the kids. We took them cycling one year, and they hated it. Well, they hated the idea of it. So we cycled the Canal du Midi, which goes from Bordeaux basically down to Béziers in France. It's a good old distance. We cycled half of it with them, which was a good sort of, I don't know, maybe 150, 175 miles, something like that, over 5 or 6 days. And my son was 9, my daughter was 11 when we did it. And on the sides of that sounds like child abuse a little bit, because, go and lie by a pool or something. But what it did was you couldn't be on a phone. You were cycling along a canal towpath, and nobody could be on their phone. You had to be present, so you had to actually talk to each other. And it turned out to be one of the best holidays we've ever had, because you got that interaction with each other. You kind of got to know each other. You spent a bit of time talking to each other, which was lovely, absolutely lovely. We actually did it twice. We did it kind of 2 years later as well. And the kids loved it. And actually, the brilliant thing is they now don't want to go and sit on a beach. Don't want to go and sit at a pool. My daughter's doing physio. She wants to go to Australia for her third year placement. We've hopefully engendered a little bit of that.
I don't think she'll come back. Anyone that I know from uni that went and did a year in Australia or went after graduation, they never came back.
Yeah, they never come back, which does point to it might be quite good out there, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. There's too many things that kill you. Who was it said that Australia's where the devil keeps his pets?
Oh, wow.
Which I think is a brilliant quote.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Scary place.
Nice.
But yeah, that idea, just connecting with people, I love that.
Likewise. And before we get to buzzwords, I think that was the big learning for my wife and I coming back from our summer holiday this year. So mine are 7 and 5. And the learning was that the summer holidays at that age are not for mommy and daddy. They're definitely for the children. Oh God, I came back exhausted and needing an actual holiday from the holiday.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're gonna. There was one of my friends sent me a couple of pictures the other day, and he says, "Today we're playing a game called How Many Beers Can Daddy Drink Today?" And tomorrow we're playing a game called Let's Leave Daddy Alone Because He's Angry. Which I thought he's obviously got his holiday priorities set.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, tough holidays with young children, I have to say.
Yeah, exhausting. Well, with that, like the name of the podcast is Insert Buzzword. And we like to ask our guests, what is a buzzword from your industry, your profession, that you either love or hate? And it can be a phrase as well.
One of the buzzwords that I think I detest is it's learning and development, because I don't think we do learning and development. I think we do tell and hope. So when I see kind of learning going on, or some of the things I've been asked to deliver in the past, it's essentially, right, you go in for a day and you tell them about communication for a day. And there's 75 slides to do that with. And it's called learning and development, and people are paying an absolute fortune for this type of stuff. And it's not learning and development because it's the circus came to town. It's essentially me coming to town, giving you an experience for a day, and then sending you away with 3 action points at the end of the day. What are you going to start? What are you going to stop? What are you going to continue doing? And we'll give you 5 minutes to think about that at the end of the day. There's no learning. There's no development happens there. It's not learning and development. And that is the standard practice across our industry at the moment, to do that. And it has been for the last 20 years, and it doesn't bloody work. So that's the main one for me. It doesn't, none of that none of it's learning. It's tell and hope.
Amen. And having started saying I need my wife to listen to this episode, I think she'd be applauding you. all the CPDs and services were just like, but who is this person that I'm supposed to listen to? I don't want to go. I know I'm going to get nothing from it. Spot
on. Right. Unless that person's embedded in your organisation for a reasonable period of time and action plans with you and sits on you to make sure that you've got your action plan, make sure that you've done the things that you said you were going to do, make sure there's accountability, it's not worth it. You're paying 1,500 quid a day for somebody from McKinsey to come in and tell you stuff you already know. And unfortunately, that seems to be the way the industry works. There are other learning development providers exist. Okay,
yes, absolutely. Tristan, do you want to ask for some? How do we find Alan and close us out?
Yeah. Well, you've kind of just done that, Jeremy. Be a bit weird. It's like in the baking recipe where there's a helping hand and you get to lick the spoon afterwards, you know. But where can our listeners get in touch with you, Alan, if they want to know more, have further chats, and see if they can?
They can get in touch with me at inquiries@takeyourmarks.co.uk. Or they can find me on LinkedIn at, I think it's Alan Clark Consulting, or they can just hunt me down. I'm just kind of kicking around, so
all over the internet,
any other way.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. It's been very enjoyable, very insightful, a lot of relatable stuff in terms of business ownership and trials and tribulations. And also lots of stuff that I had no clue about, which was really interesting to hear. So thank you very much. And we will be back next week with another episode.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're enjoying Insert Buzzword, please consider leaving us a review on your favourite podcast platform. Your reviews help us reach new listeners and keep the show going strong. And if you have any questions, topic suggestions, or dream guests for the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. You can send a message through the link in our episode description. Bye!